Congratulations, you're one step closer to the door. That's how I was welcomed into management at a Fortune 50 company. After they made the announcement and the meeting ended, an employee walked over to me, beelined it over to me. He had this smirk on his face, looked me straight in the eye, shook my hand rather vigorously, and said those words to me. Congratulations, you're one step closer to the door. And I was taken aback by that. I'm like, okay, so I just kind of laughed and shook his hand and then kind of went about my business. Thinking about that later, though, he was trying to communicate basically three things to me in that moment. One was that the position that I just accepted was the most difficult job in the entire company, and he was right. The second thing that he was trying to communicate to me is that I wasn't prepared for that position. You see, he had 15 plus years with the company, and he had often filled in for the manager when the manager position was open or the manager was out. So he was bitter because he felt like he deserved that position, not me. But he was told that the senior manager at that location would never promote from within. And there I stood, promoted from within. I had very little experience with the company. And this is a career company where you hire on and you stay an entire career. It's not unheard of to go to one of our locations and meet somebody that's been with the company 20 years, 25, 30, 35. I know people that have 40 years with this company. And there I was, 14 months into the job, and I'm going to manage them? I've not done half the jobs in the location. On top of that, my boss and my peer manager showed no interest in trying to show me what I needed to do. So basically what I did was I enrolled myself into the School of Hard Knocks. I had to figure it out, right? I was met with so much opposition, and not just from that bitter employee, but several employees that felt like, you don't deserve that job. I don't know how many times I was told, that's not policy. That's not how you're supposed to do it. You don't know my job. You've never done my job. In fact, one employee came into my office at one time and he demanded that I give him a certain performance score or better. We hadn't even talked about it yet. I hadn't even looked at his file to get ready for his performance review, but yet he's standing there telling me that if I get this score or lower, I'm going to file a grievance against you. So what did I do? I learned policy. I learned procedures. Yes, I read the manuals. I learned their jobs, and I gave that guy a lower score than he was demanding. Not intentionally. Not intentionally. He actually, that's the score he got, was an honest evaluation of his performance. And he never filed a grievance. The third thing that he was trying to communicate to me is that I wouldn't last long in that position. That I would either get frustrated and quit, or that I would be terminated because of being overwhelmed on how hard the job was. I'd like to say that was almost 24 years ago. In fact, I'll be celebrating my 25th year with the company September 6th. Oh, wow. So over the last 24 years of attending courses at the School of Hard Knocks, come to think of it, I haven't even graduated yet. But I've learned a lot of things about leadership and people and work environments and challenges. And I'd like to share some things with you, three things that I believe that all great leaders possess: engaging influence, strong cognitive power, and effective communication. We've all heard that the essence of leadership is influence, right? But engaging influence gets people engaged in what you're doing, right? You can have influence and actually repel people, right? But engaging influence takes somebody into action and gets them on board with the mission that you're trying to accomplish. And the thing about influence is leaders need to recognize that they have influence and impact. In fact, most leaders go through, actually all leaders go through what I call the leadership epiphany. It's a moment in time when a person first realizes that they're a leader. For some people, this comes at a really young age. For some people, it comes later in life. And sadly, sometimes it never comes at all. But if you were to interview a great leader and ask him this question: when was the first time that you realized you were a leader? They would be able to explain to you almost vividly the situation, the time, what happened, the moment they first realized that they had impact or influence on somebody or something. And then they usually go on and tell you about how they first realized that their words and their actions and the decisions that they made had impact on somebody or something. And that's usually followed by the intense realization that there's responsibility and accountability that came with that epiphany. And that's usually followed up by, that's what gave them the confidence and the determination to continue the mission that they're on and see it through to its conclusion. So influence, what I believe about influence is that I believe that everybody has influence. Everyone in this room has influence in some way or another to somebody or something, right? So therefore, if the essence of leadership is influence, and everybody has influence, everybody is a leader. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is when I had my epiphany, leadership epiphany. It wasn't till 8 years in management with this company that I finally realized I'm a leader. And prior to that, I had 4 years of hotel and restaurant management experience. But yet I never really saw myself as a leader. What helped me make that transition, that epiphany, was somebody finally came along and spoke truth into my life and actually was brutally honest with me and took a vested interest in developing me as a leader, a mentor that modeled true servant leadership right in front of me, something that was tangible, something that I could relate to. The second thing that I've noticed about the qualities of great leaders is strong cognitive power. You may not have heard of that term before, but basically, in a nutshell, it's the ability to have clarity, make sound, right decisions in the middle of chaos or an urgent situation. You may have heard of a little-known event that took place in 2020 that, I don't know, shut down the world. You may have heard of something called Actually, I don't want to say it because I'm hearing that it's trying to come back again. No. But I remember when I first heard about it, I was in a meeting with my manager and several other senior managers in the company. We were talking about the quarter and what's plans for next, and At the end of the meeting, my boss kind of just mentioned that, kind of off the cuff, is like, there's this virus thing kind of going around that you might want to kind of pay attention to and make sure that you got plenty of supplies. Let's just make sure that we keep our employees safe. And I remember writing it down and kind of taking notes that I got to check the supplies, make sure we're good and everything. But then I also kind of dismissed it. Because how many times have you heard of a virus going around and the media just pumps it up, and then next thing you know, whatever happened with that? I thought that would be the same thing for this. Boy, was I wrong. Completely. The next thing I know, businesses are shutting down. People are getting really sick. Mandates are happening. If you were out in California, you had mandates where you could only drive to and from essential businesses. Our company actually gave us a letter on letterhead that said, hey, we can be in our cars driving to work. It's okay. We were considered essential workers, so we worked every single day through the pandemic. Every single day. And at first I was kind of like, I got all these employees. Businesses are shutting down. We're not supposed to, people aren't supposed to be out and about. What are we going to do with all these people? They've got to make ends meet. They've got to make an income somehow. Am I going to have to do something that the company's never done before and lay people off? What's going to happen? And I was completely wrong about that too. I mean, I couldn't have missed the mark on this thing. We were so overwhelmed that each day brought in more work than we could handle. And it just kept compiling and compiling. And we had to change the way that we thought about our business. We had to pick and choose. Okay, we're going to get this done today, and we're going to push that till tomorrow, knowing that tomorrow's going to bring more work than we could handle in tomorrow anyways. And on top of that, employees started getting sick and had to stay home. Other employees had underlying health issues and were told to stay home. So we had more work than we could handle, and we had less people than we could do the work, so it just kept piling up and piling up and piling up. I remember not being able to sleep several nights with my body just shaking uncontrollably, that it wasn't shaking physically. It's hard to describe. I've never felt this way before. But it's like I couldn't relax any part of my body. And it felt like it was physically shaking, but it wasn't. And it felt like every fiber in my being was just vibrating and gyrating and moving throughout my body. And I couldn't relax. I was so stressed out. I was worried about my employees. What if somebody got really sick? What if one of my employees dies from this? What if they take the virus home and one of their loved ones dies? Luckily, none of that ever happened. We were able to keep our employees safe. But it was a time of extreme pressure and stress for us. Imagine looking a full-grown man in the eyes, and he's crying, so scared to go do his job. And having the right words to encourage him and motivate him that if you do the right things, you'll be okay. Imagine motivating 150 employees in 2 different cities to get out there and face their fears and interact with people every day during a pandemic. In California, after a few weeks of this virus going around, they mandated that you could stay home and still get paid. If you're full-time, you got 40 hours. If you're part-time, you got an average of what you would normally make. So that compounded things even further with employees just wanting to stay home. Try looking and finding the right words to say to somebody who's been working through the pandemic, learns that they can just stay home, make the same amount of money, pretty much, and now all of a sudden is worried and wants to just stay home because he's found out that he'll be paid. That's the only motivating factor. You see, cognitive power enables you to be able to look that employee in the eye and say the right thing. Cognitive power, and you've heard plenty of stories yesterday and today that proves cognitive power is a real force. It's a force that takes us beyond our current capabilities and equips us to endure the battle that we're in. That's cognitive power. A lot of your stories have described it perfectly. And the third thing that leaders need is effective communication. Great leaders are great communicators. A leader that has poor communication skills, they'll lead. They'll lead in chaos. They'll lead in disorganization. They'll lead in uncertainty, disrespect, distrust, and more importantly, low employee morale. Poor communication skills can dig such a deep hole that it's very difficult to climb back out. And it can also have long-term implications on a corporation or a work environment. I've seen it many times. I've dealt with it many times. And it takes strong, effective communication skills to be able to climb out of that hole and to change a culture. And I would argue, too, that if a leader didn't have effective communication skills, I would question whether they had the first two. It's hard to have engaging influence if you can't communicate. It's hard to have strong cognitive power if you can't communicate. Leaders that possess those three qualities can do anything that they put their minds to. Now, I just said earlier that the essence of leadership is influence and that everybody has influence, right? And everybody in this room has influence, right? Therefore, everybody in this room is a leader. There's your epiphany. And the thing about leadership is that leadership can be complex, but it can be simplified if you have the right qualities and you have someone that's willing to walk alongside you and help you in your journey, like I did. I'm James NIES. My company is the Streamline Method. It's a coaching and mentoring company that specializes in simplifying the complexity of leadership. Got a few things out there on the table that if you want to connect, I'd love to connect with you. And the books actually that are out there are free, so take them. I would love for you to steal them. and if you want, give me feedback. That would be great. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Take care.
All right. Mr. NIES, thanks so much, buddy.